You can tell. How many cups of coffee have you already had? How many cups of coffee have you had with this chat?
They are ready to go,
They have their
George.
coffee, they have their questions ready as well, so let's not wait anymore. Let's welcome our special guest this morning, Democratic presidential candidate.
Thank you. Hi, good to see you. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hi, Robert. It's nice to see you. Great.
Well, I guess you have some supporters here.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. This is a great setup.
Yeah, it is, and they have a lot of questions as well. We want to start out, though, with some news. Donald Trump on the stump last night, already looking ahead to the general election. Let's take a look.
We are going to beat crooked Hillary. She makes bad decisions. You know what Bernie Sanders said about her twice. You know that. Number one, he said she wasn't qualified. That's tough. I mean, that's tough. But he said bad judgment.
Okay, there's the first attack.
You think so? You know, George, I am not going to be responding to all the crazy stuff he says. I think we're going to talk about what's going to be good for America, how we're going to make our country provide the potential and the promise that every person in this country should be able to take advantage of. That's what I'm going to keep talking about. That's what I've worked on.
He's picking up the attacks of Bernie Sanders right there. Your campaign has said that Senator Sanders is on a destructive path. Is it time for him to get out of the race?
That's up to him. That's up to him. You know, I would never tell anybody what to do. That has to be a very personal decision. But as I said, look, we have to come together as a country. And obviously, primary campaigns, general election campaigns, there's going to be a lot of contrast drawn. People are going to, you know, fight hard to get the votes to win. I totally buy that. That's what we do. But let's not lose sight of what's really at stake here, and that is, you know, how we produce positive results for the American people, how we protect our country and keep us safe, and how we unify our country. And I am going to do my very, very best to stay focused on those questions and provide answers so people can make their best judgments.
You had a big victory, of course, here in your adopted home state on Tuesday, and after that, and you were speaking in part to Bernie Sanders supporters, and you said there's more that unites us than divides us. So how do you unite everyone?
You know, Robin, I think, first of all, there is a lot more that unites us. I know that we both, Senator Sanders and I, we want to tackle inequality. We want to raise the minimum wage. We want to make sure that people who are putting our economy at risk are reined in, regulated. No bank is too big to fail. No executive too powerful to jail. We share those views. So I believe that once the nominating process has concluded, there is a great reason to come together. And I know something about this because, as people remember, President Obama and I ran a really tough race for the entire primary season. And he ended up with more delegates. And I withdrew. I endorsed him. And then I got to work. And remember, when I withdrew in June of 2008, polls were showing that at least 40% of my supporters said, "Oh, they weren't going to support Senator Obama." So I had to get to work, and I had to make the case. I nominated him at the convention. I went from group to group, even as late as the convention, convincing people who were my delegates to come together to unify, because what then Senator Obama and I had in common was much greater than our differences. And so we were successful, thank goodness, and he was elected. So I'm hoping that the same thing will happen this time.
You guys are both also competing for superdelegates. We've got a superdelegate with a question for you, Pennsylvania Congressman Brendan Boyle.
Okay.
Hi, Madam Secretary. As one of the youngest members of Congress, I've really been struck by how many voters in their 20s and their 30s have been motivated and excited by Bernie Sanders. I was wondering what you would say to those voters as to why you're the best choice, and what we can do even after this election to make sure these voters stay engaged.
Great question, Congressman. Thanks. You know, look, I think it's terrific that so many young people are part of this process. And I'm glad that I have a good base of support, and I'm glad so many young people are supporting Senator Sanders. They are involved. That has to be good news for the Democratic Party, good news for our country. And I have said to groups of Sanders supporters that they may not support me now. I totally understand that, but I support them. I will always work in a way that keeps their futures in mind, because that's what I think you're supposed to do when you have responsibilities of public office, particularly being president. So what I'm going to do is keep talking about the agenda that I put forth, how to break down all the barriers that are holding back a lot of young people. They are burdened by student debt. They're not getting the kinds of jobs that they thought they would when they finished their education. There are not enough jobs in certain areas for young people. We've got to make sure that we lift up everybody, but I'm particularly focused on doing that when it comes to young people. And I think I'll make the case, and from everything I've seen, both personal conversations and research that has been done, just as it was with me when I dropped out, you know, the vast majority of Senator Sanders' young supporters will look at the choice. The choice will be pretty stark if either of the two leading Republican candidates become the nominee, and I'm confident that we'll all join together.
Well, thank you for answering our questions. You want to hear from the people. It is about your voice, your vote, and Lara is with a voter now.
I am. I'm with Devin DeFord, who is a student at Morgan State in Baltimore. You are currently a Sanders supporter. Let's see if Secretary Clinton can change that right now. What is your question, Devin?
Good morning, Secretary Clinton. Over the last couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks ago, you were calling for Senator Sanders to release his tax returns, which he did, and you were calling for more transparency. So, in the sake of transparency and just being fair, are you going to release your Wall Street transcripts?
Well, that's a good question. It's a very fair question, and let me answer it this way. I have released 33 years of tax returns, and you can go to my website and see 8 years, the last 8 years of my tax returns. That is the standard that has been set for years, and Senator Sanders has said he will meet that standard, and I certainly hope that he will meet that standard. Now there's a new request to release transcripts of speeches that have been given. When everybody agrees to do that, I will as well, because I think it's important we all abide by the same standard. So let's do the tax return standard first, because that's been around for a really long time.
And that's been your position for several weeks right now.
Yes.
But do you have any regrets about giving those speeches?
No, I don't. No, you know, I like everybody who served as Secretary of State, have a unique perspective. That's why Madeleine Albright and Colin Powell and Condi Rice, when you leave the Secretary of State office, people from all kinds of perspectives want to know, what do you think's going on in the world? I think that's actually a useful conversation. So, like all my predecessors, I gave speeches to a wide variety of groups, and it was, you know, predominantly about what's going on in the world. I probably was asked, the most common question I was asked was to talk about the raid that went after Osama bin Laden. I mean, people are really interested in what you see and what you understand about the world when you come out of that position.
Lara's got another question.
I do indeed, George. I am here with William Cobb. He is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, one of the huge states up for grabs next week. He says currently undecided, possibly leaning towards Sanders at the moment. What is your question for Secretary Clinton?
Secretary Clinton, first of all, congratulations on your recent victory here in New York City.
Thank you.
I served 6 years in prison for robbery, which is a violent crime. Upon my release in 2000, I worked extremely hard to restore my life. It was extremely difficult, though, because of 44,000 collateral consequences, many resulting from the crime bill you previously supported. As a result, if you are elected President of the United States, how much money will you attach to efforts that are legislation and efforts that are aimed at restoring the lives of the people and the communities that have been impacted adversely by the 1994 crime bill?
Well, that's also a very fair question. You know, Senator Sanders voted for that bill. So we both supported the 1994 crime bill because of the intense concern in every community across our country with the uptick in violent crimes, and there were steps taken to try to address that. I've said, my husband has said, that there were also problems with that, and we need to address those. you pose a very important question, because we have got to do more to help people who have paid their debt to society. They have done what you are describing, taken responsibility. Now you're out, you're looking for a chance to rebuild your life. And my commitment to you is this. I will do everything I can, number one, to divert more people away from the criminal justice system, because too many people are in for low-level nonviolent offenses. Secondly, we have got to address the unequal effects of the criminal justice system on people of color, particularly African American men, because it is just wrong, and it is a result of systemic racism, that young African American men are arrested, charged, convicted, and incarcerated at a much higher rate for doing the same things that young white men do. That's just a fact. It's a painful fact. So we've got to do more to intervene earlier to help more young people. Then on the other end, when you're coming out of jail or prison, we have to have more second chance opportunities. Among those are the following. We need to do what's called ban the box, so that you're not immediately asked for your criminal record until you've actually had a chance to compete. And I've been meeting with a lot of people who have had this experience, that they don't even get to first base, so to speak. So we need to do what some states are doing at the federal level. Secondly, we need a lot more support for people who are coming out. Job training, education, housing, the kinds of community supports that will enable you to really get your life back on track and to make a contribution. Thirdly, once you've paid your debt to society, your voting rights should be returned immediately. That is an absolute requirement for what we have to do. And so I've made it a personal mission to visit programs that are doing what I want to see done in more places. And I'm encouraged. There's some excellent programs around the country that are doing exactly what you asked be done, and I want the federal government to support those more.
Thank you for your response.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your question. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Welcome back to Times Square. GMA Town Hall with Hillary Clinton is live here in Times Square, all across the country, answering your questions as the presidential race comes to such a critical point. What I really appreciate is, even during the commercial break, you're engaged with people here. It's an opportunity for them to have a conversation with you, and you're taking full advantage of that.
Well, that's what I like most about being in politics and public life, is really learning from people and having a chance to talk about how we solve problems. It's just not enough to diagnose the problem. You got to figure out how you're going to solve the problem, and that's what I'm interested in.
Next big contest, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Cecilia Vega is there.
Great.
Their primary is on Tuesday. 189 delegates up for grabs. And Cecilia, you're in Honey's Sit and Eat Diner in Philly. What do you got?
Well, I'll tell you, George, the food looks really good here, guys. Good morning to you. Good morning, Madam Secretary. I am here with Kim Clayman. She is a 27-year-old business and finance attorney. She is a supporter of yours, and she's got a question for you this morning.
Good morning, Secretary Clinton. I'm a registered Democrat, and I support you. However, I have a 20-year-old brother who says that he supports Bernie because he doesn't trust you. What would you say to change his mind?
Well, first of all, thank you for supporting me. And here's what I would like to say to your brother, or to anyone who has that concern. Look, I work really hard to do whatever job I'm given to do. And I know I'm not a natural politician, and I know that it sometimes is more difficult to navigate through the politics and the campaigning than I wish it were. But when I have a job, like being senator from New York, being Secretary of State, people really count on me, and I do my very best to deliver for them. I ran that hard campaign against Senator Obama. We finished. He turned around. He trusted me enough to be a Secretary of State. I served for 8 years as a senator from New York. The people here trusted me. They voted for me twice, and then again in the primary. So I think it's a difference between the give and take of politics, because for whatever reason I do attract a lot of attacks, and I understand that. and actually doing the job, because when I'm here today, this is like a giant job interview. You all and everybody watching is trying to say, okay, who should be the president to help me, my family, protect our country, get us on the right track? So I just think the best way for me to answer that is just to keep doing what I'm doing, which is to talk about what I have done and what I will do, and hopefully win over your younger brother.
You said you've been attracting these attacks for a long time. I mean, clearly this comes up a lot. You said you're still trying to figure out why, and you do have a problem going forward with the polls. The majority of Americans say they don't trust you. What is behind it?
George, I don't know, other than the fact that for 25 years, you know, when I worked on health care, as you well remember, I was subjected to an enormous wave of attacks, and it hasn't stopped. And I think it's quite a tribute to first the people in New York and now here in the United States who kind of see through that. But I'm not saying it doesn't affect how people think.
Is there anything more you can do to address it?
Well, I try to. You know, when I have a job, the Republicans actually say nice things about me and what a good job I do. And then as soon as I move toward being in an election, all bets are off, and you know I'm attacked left and right. So I think there is, I'm sure, more that I can do, and I'm going to just do my best to try to break through that.
Amy's got a question on social media.
That's right. We have Nora Miller from San Francisco, California, another big state coming up, Secretary Clinton, and she sent us this video question on Facebook.
Good morning, Secretary Clinton. My name is Nora. I am retired. My question is, what is your greatest political regret? Thank you.
Well, I guess my greatest regret was voting to give President Bush authority in Iraq. It did not turn out the way that I had thought it would, based on what he had said, and I regret that. And I've said that it was a mistake, and obviously it's something that you know, I wish hadn't turned out the way it did.
And now, Larry, you have another question from a voter?
Madam Secretary, I'm with Evan Nissen. Evan is leaning toward Senator Sanders, but has a question for you.
Hi, I'm the youngest member of the board of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and I'm also on the board of Students for Sensible Drug Policy. I know that you've said in the past that you'd respect the will of the voters in states that chose to legalize marijuana, but I want to know if marijuana legalization was on the ballot in your state, if you'd vote yes or no.
I think I would have to study that more to see how it was phrased, because it's been phrased differently in different states. But I will tell you what I will do as president. I've said I want to move marijuana off of Schedule 1, which you understand means that you can't do any research about it, you can't do anything, and I think that's wrong. We have enough anecdotal evidence, as you well know, being a member of the NORML board, about what marijuana can do for medical conditions, easing pain. And we need to be doing research on it, because I am 100% in favor of medical uses for marijuana, but I want to know what the evidence is. I'm also someone who believes that the states can be those laboratories of democracy. So I'm watching carefully what's happening in the states that have legalized it to learn from them so we can base the best policy on that.
What if it was a similar industry to Colorado's right now, a similar situation to what Colorado has?
I want to wait and see what we learn from what's happening in Colorado and the other states that have gone the whole route toward absolute legalization. And I'm also watching the many other states that have done medical marijuana referenda or laws. Because in the medical arena, if you're taking several different medications and you put marijuana on top of that, we need to know what's the interaction, what's the effects, what are the best uses. And so let's be really smart about this and acquire the evidence and then make the best decisions.
Did you answer your question? Great. I love this follow-up. I love when they have their own follow-up like that. Amy, you have another social question?
That's right, another one coming in from California. Georgette El Kokar has a question about women and pay gap.
My daughter's entering the workforce. It's 2016 and we still have a pay gap. How do you plan to address it and or attack it?
Well, you're 100% right, because there still is a pay gap. It's 2016, and we're still facing the reality that women are not paid equally to men. And this is not just a woman's issue. This is a family issue and an economic issue. If you have a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, you are being cheated, because if you don't get equal pay, then that affects your whole family income. So here is what I want to do. We have laws on the books. You're supposed to be paid equally. They're very hard to enforce. Why? Because we also have laws that permit people who try to find out whether they're being paid equally for doing the same job as a male counterpart. They can be fired or retaliated against on the job for trying to get that information. So first and foremost, we should pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, which I co-sponsored, spoke for all during the time I was in the Senate. And we should also work to demand more transparency from businesses, because when they are willing to be transparent, they often find that they have some problems. I'll give you a quick example. Salesforce, which is a huge tech company in California, I give the CEO, President Mark Benioff, a big shout out, because he was challenged. Do you know whether you pay people the same? He said, well, I'm sure we do. But he went the next step and said, but let's find out for sure. Again, let's look at the evidence. Let's not just think about what we hope is the case. He looked at the evidence and he discovered it wasn't true, that he had people in the same jobs with the same experience, the same kind of performance reviews, and women were not being paid the same. So I think this is an area that we have to tackle. Now, young women usually start off much closer in parity. And then as you get up the ranks, more and more disparities occur. And so we've got work to do at all levels. And you know, one of my favorite questions during this whole campaign was in Nevada. I was at a town hall and I called on a young girl, and she stood up and she said, if you're the girl president, will you get paid the same as the boy president? And you know, I literally had to stop for a minute.
I know.
And I said, well, I think that's one job where you know what the pay is. So I think so.
We went into the GMA vault and found your first appearance here on Good Morning America.
Oh my gosh.
In 1988. When you were speaking out about your lawyer and talking about equality and such. You talked to Charlie Gibson. Here it is.
Oh my gosh.
I want to go to the nature of that evidence. Does it show that there is systemically in the legal profession prejudice?
Well, I don't know if you can say that it's systemic. I think what you could say is that it is still prevalent. It may not happen to every woman lawyer every day, but somewhere it happens.
Oh my goodness. See what I mean about hairstyles? Just say nothing of hair color.
But for as long as we can remember and seeing you in the spotlight, you have been fighting for others.
That is what I believe in. I believe, you know, I think it's a great gift if you can somehow define what you believe your purpose to be. And maybe it's because my mom had such a terrible childhood and was so abused and mistreated and neglected and out on her own by the age of 14 that she really instilled in me that you had to get up every day, no matter what had happened to you the day before, and you'd have a better day if you figured out some way to help somebody. And I just felt like she was absolutely a living example of that, not being bitter, but being resilient. And so, yes, I mean, that is a clip from, you know, working on pay inequality and other barriers standing in the way of women lawyers. I was chairing a commission for the American Bar Association back then. And in this campaign, my main message is I want to break down all the barriers that stand in the way of people getting ahead. And yes, there are economic barriers that we have to tackle, no doubt about it. I share that with Senator Sanders. We've got to raise the minimum wage, we have to get equal pay, and so much more. But there are other barriers. There are education barriers. Every child deserves a good teacher in a good school every single year, regardless of the zip code that child lives in. There are still health care barriers. And there are barriers of discrimination that stalk people because of who they are, what they look like, who they love. So what we have to do is knock down all those barriers, because by doing that, we not only give individuals a chance to really make the most out of their own lives, we really do more to get America to realize its potential.
Our little coffee chat with Hillary Clinton continues. In the time remaining, we want to get as many questions as possible. Rod, you have a question?
You and I have something in common. We both put hot sauce in everything.
Yes.
So I have to ask you, sriracha, Tabasco, or Tapatio, or what?
Well, actually, I have a collection that includes all of those and many more. And I started, I mean, I've always liked hot sauce, hot foods, but I started using hot sauce on nearly everything back in '92 because I read an article that it would help my immune system to stay healthy during that '92 campaign. Now, I have continued doing it almost religiously, and so far so good. So that's all I can tell you. We do have that in common.
Christina Gonzalez.
My question for you is, what would you say is Bill's most annoying habit?
What would I say, what?
What would you say is Bill's most annoying habit?
Oh my gosh, where do we start? How long do we have? Let's see. Okay, if you don't tell anybody. No matter how tired he is, he always feels like he has to read before he falls asleep. So he used to have the light on. I said,
You're going to get saved by the bell here. We're out of time.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
So anyway, he always falls asleep. So that means I have to get up, go around, and turn the light off on the other side of the bed.
Questions. We hope you'll come back for another one.
This was great. It was a lot of fun. Thank you both. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.